Hi, it's Lynn, your adulting coach. In a recent survey of 7,000 parents of alternative learners, the primary concern was screen use. Many alternative learners use screens to escape the discomfort that comes from being human. And that's okay as long as we don't overdo it and stop doing the things that really matter to us to create the life that we love. So why does this happen and what can we do about it? Let's first start out by defining stress. Stress is anything that takes energy. And there are three inevitable stressors. We cannot escape these in our human life: pain, fear, and work. And our mistake comes from hoping that we can, because these three tools, these three experiences actually fuel our growth. So we don't really want to escape them, but we would like to handle the discomfort better. So let's talk about why it even comes up in the first place. Our brain, on default, seeks pleasure in the form of instant gratification, avoids pain, makes sure that we're perfectly safe, and conserves energy, making certain that we are minimizing our efforts. That's not going to get us the life we want. We actually have to do the opposite. We have to delay pleasure so that we get the long-term benefits. We have to lean into the pain so that we learn and grow, and we have to expend maximum energy so that we can try a bunch of things to see what really works for us. So why don't we lean in? Well, the first thing is, the minute that stress comes into our body, we cannot talk ourselves out of it. We have to do something to attend to the vibrations that are created by the sentences in our minds that tell us that we really don't want this. Something as profound as yuck, or I hate this, or ew. That sentence says, I hate, discomfort. I don't like this. I don't want this. It's an emotion. I want to avoid it. I want to reject it, resist it. But the problem is we can't talk ourselves out of it right away. We have to attend to our body first. And that's why you hear many Buddhists and other mindfulness practitioners asserting that breathing is where we start. Breathing helps. And it also helps us to surf the wave of that feeling. Actually, most of our escaping comes from under feeling, not feeling enough. So we want to feel that feeling, because even though it may not feel good, it will likely dissipate in 90 seconds. Our bodies are meant to feel feelings. It really helps if we can name it. We can say, oh, this is my brain offering me rejection, offering me, I just don't want to, avoidance. And here's our mind that's actually noticing our brain feeling that feeling, pain, I don't like it. It's really uncomfortable. That's our brain who's reacting to a sentence that our mind has created. And the best way to learn about how and why we're reacting is that we notice our stories, what we're telling ourselves. So we just answer three questions. What happened? What's the facts? What are the plain, just unglorified facts? The ones that 8 billion people on the planet would agree with. I have a son. I have a daughter. I have a body. I have a life. So what is the story that we're making out of it? Those are the thoughts and emotions that are created by those thoughts. I don't like this. Avoid. I wish this weren't happening. Resistance. I hate it when this happens. Hate. Ugh. And now what is the third question. Now what? And that's when we create the actions that are flavored by our thought combination and create the results in our life. And when we slow down and ask ourselves these three questions, we can handle our stress better because we realize that we're telling ourselves a story and there are many options of the way that we can interpret what's happening in our life. Well, the second option is to escape. And that's what we do often. We seek pleasure to help ourselves feel better. And we're looking for that dopamine hit. That's the excitement and achievement neurotransmitter. It gives us the reward. Oh, yes, let's go. Oh, victory, I scored. I got that, whatever it was in the game. That yummy sugar. Oh, God, I get that nice dopamine hit from the dessert that we're eating. It's our pathway to pleasure. It also numbs pain. So, its purpose was so that we could run away from the saber-toothed tiger, I guess. I think that's why our brain held on to this process. But that numbing of the pain, when we numb our pain on some of those things where we just keep going in that dopamine cycle because we've been hooked by the manufacturers of the games or the books or the whatever it is that we're using to numb our pain, and we get caught up in that, and then we end up at the end feel numb. Here's the thing, is that we're really not calming down when we think we're going to these pleasures. What we're really doing is continuing the stress cycle, which continues to cause us to want to seek the pleasure. And that's what's really going on inside of our brains. Of course, that's exactly what the manufacturers of these dopamine hooks want us to do. They want us to stay on the news app on our phone, in a book, playing pool, playing gambling, any other kind of pleasure that, if we do it to excess, becomes a false pleasure. By doing it in excess, by overdoing it, we take a lot of the pleasure out of it because we're avoiding doing what really matters to us. So people with autistic brains have very, very sensitive brains. They produce a lot of stress. There's a lot of thoughts. There's a lot of warnings. There's a lot of alarm bells going off on the regular. So they do consume more dopamine than their brain can produce. So know that this is a biological something happening. It's not character driven. And we notice that because when we ask them to stop, they get very angry. They are just emphatic that they need that game to cope. They need their time on YouTube to cope. They need to eat to help them calm down. But again, when we overdo it, our pain is numbed, and when we stop, we feel that pain, which tells us to seek that pleasure one more time. What we really want to do in the long run is match who we are on the inside, what really matters to us, and our values, our deepest desires, and our creative expression, so that day to day we create personal happiness and fulfillment. We want to be our own dopamine creator and those other neurotransmitters that produce pleasure and bonding, like oxytocin. So here's what would help best, which is oxytocin, the feel-good neurochemical. It's the bonding neurochemical. Trouble is, when you're alone in a game or Netflix or whatever, you're not bonding. Now, notice that it is kind of fun to play some of those games with your friends. And there you're going to create the oxytocin. So yes, it's not that they're bad and good. It's that we want to stay in that healthy middle where we don't overdo them or we don't underdo them, but we stay right in the healthy middle where we're getting a nice, where we're creating our own dopamine, where we're creating oxytocin by being with others, and we know when to stop because we've decided in advance that we're only going to spend a certain amount of time in those seeking dopamine triggered situations. So how do we get our kids, how do we get ourselves to notice when we are doing this? Because it's very likely, as we are all human, that we are all doing this. So we need to notice what's happening. We're being manipulated to feed the dopamine producer's economic model. I mean, that's really what it is. The people who, I knew an engineer who worked at M&M Mars, and it was their job to engineer the food to trigger all the right neurotransmitters and hormones in our bodies. I mean, the foods are manufactured, the salt and grease in potato chips. Oh God, that's one of mine. Hell of a good dip with ridged, potato chips. They know what gets us going as humans, and they want to do the best they can to keep us consuming more of it, because that means we're going to spend more time with them or on whatever they're producing. Once we do that and we understand and observe ourselves, we see the cycle, we notice what we feel like when we're done. Like at yesterday at Memorial Day celebration, I ate more of those potato chips, and I was like, why did I do that? I just, why? It didn't help. I didn't need it. Anyway, so just noticing and observing it in ourselves. And then we need to explore some ways to deal with stress in kinder, healthier ways so that we escape less and do what matters more. And the kinder way means we don't beat ourselves up. Because when we do that, we try to employ, just self-motivation, just willpower. And willpower is an emotion that, just like every other emotion, dissipates quickly. So if we try to do it and white knuckle it and try not to eat less, I mean, anybody can talk themselves into not eating as much for a short period of time. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to lay out a way to learn how to train our brain to produce the dopamine, to be able to create that oxytocin so that we get the feel good from doing what really matters to us, our longer term goals and results that we want. Here's how we can help each other. We can become oxytocin producing factories for each other. First way is by touch. I really need a hug. Please give me a hug. The second is validating. By listening and validating the emotions and thoughts of the other, helps us feel seen, helps us feel safe, helps us feel soothed, helps us feel secure. And that oxytocin, there's just no substitute for it. And of course, doing joyful things together, having those holiday celebrations, and just, it doesn't even have to be a big deal. It's just do something together. We like to garden, we like to exercise together. Some of those things, it took me a long time to convince my young adults, but wow, not only do they benefit, but I benefit hugely. So I think I just went over that. Anyway, ask for a hug, listen and validate, and do something together. So yes, here's the other way that we can help each other is we can create collaborative solutions. This is when we find the facts, just the facts that we both can agree on. We listen to the other person's thoughts and feelings until they feel heard. Then we give them in a bite-sized sentence or two our thoughts and feelings, and this is where we can warn them as parents. This is where we can set the boundaries as parents. Look, here's my concern that if we keep this up, you're just not going to get where you want to go. You're not going to be okay on your own someday, and that just worries the heck out of me. You're not going to be able to give your gifts to the world which are unique to you and the world needs. And then, okay, if we're getting together, we're catching each other's ideas, we're really, writing some of them down so that we really do understand and show that we're attuning into what matters to them, as well as asking them to attune to us, which is that reciprocity we want to build. And then we design an experiment together and we go try it. And then we figure out later what worked and what didn't. Well, where did we learn and where did it work? Because it's really just learning or working. It's one of the two. And then we start back at the beginning again. We go back to the facts and we just repeat this cycle as long as we are on this earth. So I've produced a quick summary of what I just created, what I just reviewed in this presentation. I also want to invite you to join me on Tuesday, June 6th, Inside the Art of Adulting, for the Handle Stress, Escape Less, Do More 30-day reboot. This is for people who want to restart a pattern and change their result. They notice that they packed on a few more pounds. They notice that they spent, almost the whole day on screens. They notice that their people-pleasing is another thing we can overdo. They notice they're more worried about other people's opinions about them, and so that's when they mask, or they, they're doing a lot of masking, or they're doing a lot of beating themselves up that they don't fit in. And we need to notice when that's happening and try to come up with a healthier way to manage dealing with the stress that comes from the social interactions that we have. I mean, we do overdo it in screen time and people pleasing and eating and any other pleasure, which actually undermines the pleasure and turns it into distracting us from what really matters to us. So the month of June is really the perfect time to reset for the summer. It also might be one of the most challenging times because there's changing in the routines as schools end, or as the summertime we have more celebrations with Memorial Day and July 4th and all those things that are in the spontaneous, let's have a picnic type thing. So it may be the really good time to set that 30-day reboot, because it tends to happen that if we decide we're going to do something, we have a lot of energy behind it. And for those 30 days, we're able to maintain that sort of self-discipline and just energy. And what we're trying to do in this reboot is doing it teaching ourselves how to do this in a very kind way so that it's sustainable over long term. I mean, anybody can lose 5 pounds in a month, but trying to lose it and keep it off for the next year, that requires a little bit more thought work. So we take this intense focus for 1 month to reboot the pattern so that we can create those long-term results that we're after. So week 1, here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at where we are now with love. We're going to look at yesterday. What did we eat? How much time did we spend on screens? What were some of the things happening in our life where we ended up people-pleasing? What's going on? And we do that in a loving, kind way. Of course, that's what happened. You were looking to help yourself feel better. It makes perfect sense. You're really attending, trying to make life more pleasant for yourself. It certainly makes sense. Then the week 2, we talk about really clarifying what we really do want. Do we want, what do we want long term? Is we want a healthy body at a normal weight, at just a good weight. Doesn't have to be too skinny, and then we may even actually eventually, if we're trying to lose weight, we may lose and get to whatever number we think would be magical, and then decide, okay, is that going to fit into my lifestyle? We're not trying to legislate that we should, have that work out 6 hours a day so that we have that body that others say is desirable. What we're really trying to do is to design a lifestyle that works for us. So is this, if we even drop down to that magic number, is that the, do we want to adjust that up to see, because we can tell how disciplined we're gonna, how little we're gonna be able to eat. It's gonna have to be mostly lean and mostly clean food. Maybe we want to adjust it a little bit so that we can, have the cupcake at the celebration, or the birthday cake, or the cookies, or whatever it is, that the glass of wine, that adds to our pleasure there. Then we want to make a promise to ourselves. Okay, for the next 3 days, here's my promise. This is what I'm going to do. And we design it to be very specific, so we know when we're getting traction, and we know when we're off. That's when we're getting distracted. We need to know whether we're on or off our practice. Finally, we're going to do all of that preparation of our mind, because we know that this is a long-term change that we're looking to not only create now, but sustain for a very long period of time. And that's going to require looking at our thinking and deciding on purpose which one of those thoughts work best for us. So please come get the tools to do this. Please get the help in the weekly coaching that you'll get. I'll be sending you daily videos that just bite-size these steps. I'm going to be working on dropping 5 pounds again, going back to where I was about 6 months ago. And I've noticed that I'm not adhering to my practice. I'm not keeping my promise to myself as well as I could. So I'll be reflecting on that. And then coaching calls are within the Art of Adulting every Tuesday at 1 p.m. I really can't wait to see you there. Bye for now.